Hi guys, sorry we're still on lesson 2.2. Right at the end it got cut off quite a bit, so I'm gonna keep going on lesson 2.2 number 2. So just to recap, in number 1 we figured out that it was x plus 5 equals 20. Now, looking at number 2, it says that Andre's school has 20 clubs, which is 5 times as many as his cousin's school. His cousin's school has X clubs. So we know that Andre's school has a total of 20 clubs. So I'm going to go ahead and draw my tape diagram and write a 20 there because I know that that's the total. And we know that his cousin's school is 5 times, or this is 5, Andre's school is 5 times as many as his cousin's school is. And his cousin has X clubs. So I know that 20 is 5 times the amount of his cousin's school. So within our total of 20, I'm going to go ahead and split it up into 5 parts. And I know that each part is worth X. Whatever number his cousin's school has, how many clubs it has, it is 1 part out of 5, or 1/5 of 20. So how can we represent this as an equation? We know that x repeating 5 times, x plus x plus x plus x plus x is going to equal 20. We also know that repeated addition is equal to multiplication. So, if I'm repeating x 5 times, it is the same thing as doing 5 times x, which can be written in different forms. I use this dot here to represent multiplication because if I tried to use this multiplication symbol and then an x, we would be very confused. So if this diagram is representing x 5 times equals a whole of 20, we now need to figure out which of the equations is showing us this. So we know that it's not this one because that's addition. We know that x plus 20 equals 5 is not representing 5 times x equals 20. We know that 20 plus 5 is also, again, addition and not the same thing. 5 times 20 equals x. Okay, you may be thinking, is 5 times x equals 20 the same as 5 times 20 equals x? And in order to determine that, you could go ahead and think about what 5 times 20 equals. 5 times 20 is equal to 100. That would mean that x equals 100. And if you did 5 times x, with x being 100, you would get 500 and you would not get 20. So this equation does not work for that situation. Now looking at 5x equals 20 right here. The number 5 next to the variable x is telling you to multiply. You may see that a lot. You may see 5x, you may see 6x, you may see 7x. Anytime that the variable is next to the letter, it just means to multiply. So this equation, 5x equals 20, is the same as 5 times x equals 20, which, as we mentioned above, represents this diagram in this situation. So that one works. 5x equals 20. Now, 20x equals 5. This does not work because in order to make that equation true, you would have to have a number here multiplied with 20 that would give you a total of 5. And we already know that our total is 20 clubs. Okay. So up here, I'm going to go ahead and put 5x equals 20 because that is the equation that makes the most sense with this situation. All right. The last one says that Jada volunteers at the animal shelter. She divided 5 cups of cat food equally to feed 20 cats. So we know that we have a total of 5 cups. And we're splitting the cups up between 20 cats. So I'm going to have to take this 5 cups and split it into 20 parts. In order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and split each part into a cup. And I know that I have to split these 5 cups up into 20 total parts. And so in order to do that, I'm going to take my 5 cups and I'm going to split them into 4 equal parts. I'm going to do this in a different color to make sure it's not confusing. What I'm doing right now is I'm making sure my total of 5 cups is split into 20 parts. I can go ahead and count all of these squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I now have 5 cups split up into 20 parts in order to feed 20 cats. So, what I now need to figure out is how I can represent this and what the x would even be if, like looking at this diagram could be a little bit confusing if you don't remember when we used tape diagrams before. So each of these little green parts is representing how much one cat would get, okay? So we know that each of these is x. And the parts are pretty small, so I'm not going to write an x for each one. But I want you to think about how many times the x is repeating in order to get to the total of 5 cups. If you're confused, you can go ahead and count all of the parts. But the answer is that the x is repeating 20 times, and it's equaling a total of 5. So we have 20 times x equals 5. Okay? Now, it's hard to see with my drawing, but the equation that works for this one is 20x equals 5. Now, if you're wondering what would go in the value of x to make this true, the answer is that each cat would get 1/5 of a cup. And I know this because this part here is 1 part out of 5 total parts in 1 cup. I can show you how this works also by plugging in 1/5 as x. (20) is the same as 20 over 1. And with multiplication of fractions, you multiply across. 20 times 1 is 20. 1 times 5 is 5. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, it's not 1/5, it's 1/4 of a cup. That makes sense. If you looked back into my diagram, I wasn't splitting up each one into 5 parts, I was splitting each one up into 4 parts. That's right, I'm sorry. So this should actually look like this. 20 times 1 is 20. 1 times 4 is 4. And 20 divided by 4 equals 5. Okay? So for the last one, 20x equals 5 is the correct equation to go with the situation. That was a lot that we just went through, especially with the last diagram, so if you're confused, please send me a message or let me know. Oops, I just dropped my Apple Pen. I'm going to go ahead and move on to lesson 2.3, using structures to find solutions. So it says, here are some equations that could contain a variable and a list of values. Think about each equation means and find a solution in the list of values. If you get stuck, draw a diagram. Be prepared to explain why your solution is correct. So, what you need to do is you need to take these values and you need to plug them into the variable to see if it works. For example, looking at number 1, if I took the value 1 and I put it into A, we would have 1,000 minus 1 equals 400. Now, I think you guys could tell me that 999 is not equal to 400. So that is a value that would not work for number 1. Now we could try another one. Let's try the value 2. 1,000 minus 2 does not equal to 400. 1,000 minus 2 is equal to 998. We're a little bit closer. So the idea is that you're substituting values into the variables to try to get one that works. So let's try 400. 1,000 minus 400 equals 400. Let's see if that works. I'm going to go ahead and line this up. 1,000 minus 400 . And the answer here is 600. Oops. Sorry, I did not make that very clear, but 1,000 minus 400 is 600. An easy way you could have done that in your head is to know that 10 minus 4 equals 6, and then add on the 2 zeros that you took off to do that in your head. Alrighty, 600 is not equal to 400. And so this equation still does not work, but 600 is a lot closer to 400 than 999 was. So let's go ahead and find a value, in our values that is close to 400. Right here, I can see that 600 is super close. Or at least it's the closest one on the list. So I'm going to go ahead and see if 1,000 minus 600 equals 400. And again, like we did before, I know that 10 minus 6 is 4. Add on those zeros, and 400 does equal 400. So your answer for number 1 is going to be 600. A equals 600. Okay, on your own, you're going to go ahead and continue to do what's called substitution by picking values or picking numbers and plugging them into the variable. So for example, picking 1/8 and seeing if 1/8 as B makes the equation true. or if it doesn't, trying 1 and seeing if 1 makes this equation true, and keep going until you get all of the right answers. Alrighty, if you did all of that and you're feeling like this was way too easy, go ahead and do the "Are you ready for more?" question. This question is just designed for a challenge. It's not required of anyone. The lesson summary down here is meant to kind of just review everything that we did within the lesson, and it can be a good resource for parents or for students to read before you even attempt to do the lesson. Think about, once you finish all the problems, think about where your understanding is. Is it a 4, a 3, a 2, or a 1? Are you getting it, or do you need some extra help? Please do not hesitate to reach out to me if you need more help with this lesson. I know that variables can be kind of confusing at first, and this part in particular can be kind of tricky when you get into the fractions substituting. So please let me know if you have any questions. Alrighty, that's all for now.